Hello and welcome to the Good and Talk. Back in with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT podcast, our weekly show in which I'm joined by a couple of guests to talk about the most previous Arsenal league game, which is weird because we don't usually do these in midweek, but with how congested the fixture lists are, this is probably going to become quite a regularity throughout the season. So stick with us, and I hope you enjoy the additional content, of course. And I know there was only just about 2.5 hours since we last finished recording on our Let's Talk Arsenal show, which was very kind of social media based. So if you want to check out that sort of thing, you can go listen back to that. But let's crack on with today's show and let me introduce my two guests. It's French and Fung. I'm loving the fact I've got the alliteration there. It's absolutely brilliant. How you doing, French? You all right, mate?
Yeah, good, pal. Very good. Obviously, nice to talk in these circumstances. So,
yes,
yeah, it's been a little while as well. I don't think I've seen you since the New Year. So, Happy New Year to you and all the listeners as well.
Yeah, you too, mate. You too. What have you been up to? How did you spend the New Year's?
Well, I was in, as most people were, had a little meal with my mates, a couple of cigars, nothing too fancy. My friends are Chelsea fans, so obviously we'd just beaten them just before, and so it was a lot of fun, to be honest. I was having a great time. I think they lost after playing us as well to Villa or something. So just having a good time, like with a couple of mates, taking it easy, and actually was a really good New Year's. To be honest, one of the best I've had in a while. So.
Oh, there you go. We should clarify that French is at uni, so he's with flatmates before people think that he's flouting the rules and going off with other people. He's not. He is at uni, so that is the reason as to why. And we're joined by the villain of the chat box. It's Christopher Fung. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm doing good, Tom. Thanks for having me on again. Always appreciate the invite to get on.
No problem at all, mate. Are you enjoying being kind of the anti-hero of TGT at the moment?
It's the only role I know. I'm kind of kind to everyone else except for our lovely host, Tom, who I actually do think is a great YouTube personality. It's just fun to joke around with everyone in the chat. The chat's amazing always.
Yeah, it is. And we've got some great guys in here this evening. I'm well aware that Chelsea are playing right now, but we have to maintain the form of doing these shows at 8:30 the day after our league games. But I'm sure we'll be reacting to that. And of course, Southampton, who we face maybe on Saturday, are playing 2 and are currently 1-0 up as we record against Shrewsbury. So it looks like we'll be playing them. And by the end of the show, we'll be able to make some more predictions about what might be happening in regards to that. But hello and good evening, everyone in the chat. Drew, as Hanshumi says, where is Drew? Drew, unfortunately, couldn't make today's show. He had to pull away last minute and couldn't make it. But he will be back very, very soon. Don't you worry. He's not gone anywhere bad. He's just a busy, busy man. Let's kind of crack straight onto things and talk a little bit about yesterday's game, as we always do with the start of the show, to just sort of get your raw reaction to things. French, I'm going to start with you, mate. Were you kind of nervous going into the match, and especially when it went into half-time at 0-0, were the nerves kind of there that, it's going to be another Crystal Palace episode again?
Do you know what? So my girl asked me like if I was excited going into the game, and I was like, not really. Like I don't really know how I felt. It wasn't excitement, like I wasn't confident we were going to win, but I also wasn't worried or particularly nervous. It was just I don't know what we're going to get, sort of thing. I don't yet have the faith in the team, even though we've actually strung a few clean sheets together and a little unbeaten run. You still don't really have that faith that we're going to pull it out the bag. So I just was kind of tentative. I didn't know what to expect. But to be honest, at the half-time point, I didn't feel as worried as a lot of people did. I know the ref blew the whistle a bit early, and a lot of people were like, oh yeah, the ref has had enough as well. He doesn't want to see any more. And so it was like a lot of people seemed to be kind of sick of what they were seeing in the first half and likening it to the Palace game. But I didn't feel that way. I felt like we were playing a lot more in their half. I thought we were a lot more kind of dominant on the ball, and we were knocking on the door. We weren't knocking it down, but I thought we looked like likely. Whereas against Palace, I thought Palace looked likely. So at the halfway mark, I wouldn't say I was confident, but I wasn't worried either. I was kind of liking some signs of what I was seeing, and I wasn't too nervous at that point.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think the Palace obviously looked a bit of a threat with Zaha on the break, and he threatened a couple of times, and there was a couple of moments where he won fouls in dangerous areas, arguably went down for what could have been argued a penalty. Thankfully, it wasn't given, and Newcastle just didn't threaten at all. Really, I think there was a moment with Andy Carroll in the box, and we let them cross into the box a couple of times, which I found is a bit odd, because if you are going to try and stop Newcastle when they've got Andy Carroll up top, you'd think the best way would be to stop the crosses as soon as possible. But we didn't. But we ultimately didn't have to really deal with too much. Chris, it was kind of a... Sorry, French, were you going to say something?
They look more dangerous in the FA Cup game.
Yes, no, definitely. You're 100%. Andy Carroll had a couple of chances he should have put away in that game, and they just couldn't seem to. And weirdly, they were playing a stronger side in the league game as well, and had Callum Wilson back as well. So we dealt with that pretty confidently. Chris, this is our 5th clean sheet in a row, the first time in 11 years since Arsenal have managed to pull that off. Is that obviously the opponents that we've come up against have not been amazing in those weeks and the ones that we've pulled them off against, but is that a huge kind of props to Arteta for kind of turning around Arsenal's defence, which we've always looked at over those 11 years as kind of our biggest Achilles heel?
I definitely think it's amazing. Like, it's when you think about Arsenal over the past 10 to 15 years, we've been pretty synonymous with leaking goals. We'd get ourselves in good positions and we just give away the lead. It was just a common Arsenal thread that we weren't able to defend well. So it's kind of nice and refreshing that under Arteta, he's been able to kind of move us from a team with no identity to a defensive identity. And now we're starting to see kind of the beginnings of that free-flowing football that he kind of spoke about when he first came in. So I do think having that defensive identity, and it's every player in that back line has been chopped and changed, and we still had the same result. So that to me is kind of progress in our back line, just to see that whether it's Holding, Louise, Mari, Gabrielle, Tierney, Bellerin, Cedric, we're still able to kind of maintain that shape and keep those clean sheets. So it's very promising for sure, and hopefully we can continue to build on that and kind of unleash that offensive potential that we all know that the team has.
Yeah, and that offensive potential has obviously been what's so locked up for what felt like nearly a half season. It nearly was. We kind of saved it a little bit towards the end of the festive period. But for those 10 matches where we only won one league game within them, it did feel like we didn't really know where a goal was coming from. And then all of a sudden, we've scored a fair few over the last few games, 3 in this game. Of course, we blitzed West Brom as well. We got 3 against Chelsea. We weren't able to break down a very stubborn Crystal Palace defence. And we were ultimately took the really kind of one of the only chances we had against Brighton to win that game with Lacazette scoring. But the key difference, French, it's very, very obvious that one man has come into the lineup ever since Chelsea, and we've not really looked back, and that's been Emil Smith Rowe. And it's almost timely that our old number 10 has now moved on, vacating that number 10 shirt. I'm not so much on the train of giving it to Smith Rowe just yet, but he's kind of making a claim for that position now, isn't he?
Yeah, he absolutely certainly is, and everyone in the fan base wants to see him given a chance in that position, and rightly so. He's been amazing since he's come in. He's been amazing quite consistently, actually. You know, previously at Huddersfield, he was amazing, and his little features here and there for Arsenal have always, for the most part, been impressive. I think his overall record, when named in the Arsenal starting lineup, I think it's maybe like 10 games. They're all wins and with like 4 draws scattered in there. So, you know, every time he's come onto the pitch from the start of the game, he's done well. The only question was, can he do it consistently? And he's done it very consistently with end product in these last few games. And I think that's something that's really special, especially in such a young kid. We all could see kind of the talent, you know, when he gets the ball, but can they produce at the end of the pitch where it matters? The business end is something that we often kind of level at young players, which was, you know, ultimately the end of people like Alex Iwobi, for example. He could do a lot of stuff before he got to the box, but it was that decision making, that sort of coolness, the temperament to make the right decision in those high pressure situations. And Emil Smith Rowe has done it time and time again. It's really amazing. I think he's created, you know, a huge amount of chances. He's come into the team the most of any Arsenal player. I think in the most recent game, it was more than the whole Newcastle team combined. He created like 3 chances or something. It was just really, really impressive. And the main thing about it is that it's been quite consistent. It's been every few games. I'm not sure what the stat is now, but before the most recent game, it was a goal contribution every 73 minutes, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, you could say so much about him. You could see him going into the Euros with England, you know, being a late shout for the squad.
Do you think you could get a call up then?
I think I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to say he's nailed on at all, but I think he's got a late shot. I think Southgate's got to be looking at him, and the chemistry between him and Saka as well, and just thinking this is something that we need to nurture. We need to kind of harness. But at the same time, and I'm completely on this train, by the way. My Twitter handle right now is Emil Sacanelli FC, and it's just kind of like our hearts are just in these three young players, and we just have a feeling that when we get two or more of them on the pitch, we can do something. But at the same time, I don't want to kind of like then kind of rain on the parade that I've just built up. But some people are saying that he should just be our number 10 for the rest of the season for good. We've got a number 10 now. We're all right. We don't need another creative attacking midfielder, and that's kind of where I edge the caution to say that he still is a young player. They still go through bouts of form. He obviously has had an issue with injuries in the past, and for his sake as much as for ours, I think we still need to look at kind of strengthening and depth in that position. But I absolutely think he should be given a chance in that role.
And if I could just hop on at the end of French's point, he made some excellent points. I was just thinking about kind of his development journey and how a lot of fans are pushing for more and more kind of the Hale End Academy products to kind of make it through to the first team. I think Emil Smith Rowe is a great example of what patience can really do for those young players. If you send them out on loan, they get some valuable experience. They can come in and have an impact more so than someone like Joe Willock, who's kind of consistently been on the bench, playing youth football, and then now kind of trying to make that integration to the first team. It's been a lot harder for him. And of course, you can look at his talent level. He's likely not as talented as Smith Rowe, but there is an element of some, like, your development can kind of be stunted if you're kind of rushed through in the first team, unless you're an exceptional talent like Bukayo Saka.
Yeah, and he is an exceptional talent. And when you kind of look at the age that he's at and the progression that he's made, and then you look at, say, a player like Reece Nelson, who is older than the Bukayo Saka and the level that he's at and what he's been able to accomplish, and it does go to show you the different levels that these two young guys are on. And I get there's a lot of love for Reece Nelson, especially amongst a lot of our chat box, and a lot of them would like to see him kept. I look at him as more of a kind of a sellable asset, that if a good price comes along for him, I'm open to that happening, because the same with Joe Willock and Eddie Nketiah, I can't see a long-term future for those guys at the club. And Arsenal need to be looking at the Liverpools and how they deal with some of their young players and the amount of money that they make for them, and that they don't hang on for them for too long. And when they get a good offer with the likes of Solanke and Jordan Ibe and most recently Brewster, that they do move them on. And I think Nelson, ultimately, if you're looking ahead and you're looking at Arsenal's kind of wide positions, Martinelli and Saka have kind of got those nailed down. If Pepe is going to be given the investment of the manager, which is still a very big question, but if you are at the club and you've invested £72 million in a Nicola Pepe, and you've got Nelson, who's kind of failed to really imprint himself onto the club when he's been given those chances, you're probably leaning more towards giving Pepe the time over a player like Nelson. He has had to deal with some injury issues this season, which has come to light, but it's maybe something that the chat box can have a discussion about in there. Now, let's just jump into the chat box very quickly and see what you guys have been saying whilst we've been chatting away. Evening to all of you. Yannick says, Chris doesn't seem like the Chris without that white and red picture that you've had in the chat, which you have changed recently, actually. You changed your picture, didn't you?
I did. I thought it was nice for a change. I'm also doing some stuff for a Raptors podcast, so I kind of switch back and forth between both. And nice. I like to keep it fresh so people don't really know what I'm going to do every time I'm in the chat. Living up to that anti-hero status, Tom.
Well, you know, it's the venom level of TGT is where we're at. The real Janice says, "What's up, guys? Look at that. Chris is on. He can give me stick on camera now rather than just to see. You see what I mean? It's the anti-hero thing, mate. It's giving people a stick constantly in the chat box." And he follows that up with just watching the video that I made earlier about Bellerin's documentary and was laughing so much because he was getting so wound up by all of Bellerin's haters. Yes, we'll get on to Cedric very, very soon. There was a bit of love for French from Mr. Joker. Says French has the best hair. Tom and Chris sharpen up. Lol. Yes, I mean, there's a reason why I've got a hat on. It's because we're in lockdown. I can't get it cut And yeah, I don't expect you to see me without this hat on, or any other hat for that matter, for quite a while until it does. I might even have to give the other half the Clippers and just let her do something, because it'll be better than what it's going to look like in the end. So we'll have to wait and see. Femi says Auba is proven while Gabby is developing, and that was in response to Pablo Mira's question, I believe, which was thrown in a little earlier on, who asked, with Martinelli fully fit and Auba picking up form, who do you start? And Chris, this is an interesting one, because Aubameyang obviously has faced a little bit of criticism amongst the fan base, amongst us guys here in the chat, and obviously myself on the shows, and questioning whether he should be dropped, whether he should be starting, whether he should be getting any minutes or whatever. And then yesterday he came alive again, was given the opportunities to score, and he took them and did really well. There was a chance earlier on in the game when he hit the post from very close range, and it was one of those moments where you're like, that's a make or break. But he came back from that completely re-energized and got 2 goals. Where is your head at with the Gabonese forward?
Oh, this is a very tough question, just because I think there is a spot for him on the left wing. You saw him drifting in a lot more, and I think it's really because he had Tierney behind him supporting him on the left flank. But then he also has Emile Smith Rowe kind of drifting out wide that kind of supports him as well. But I really do like Martinelli out on the wing. He just adds that element of drive, determination. He has the confidence that he's always going to beat his man. He's got the pressing, the intensity, the work rate. But again, he's working his way back from injury. He's kind of had knocks all along the way. So I do think we're going to have to be a little careful with him. But I don't see a reason why Martinelli couldn't start some games at left wing with Aubameyang up top. Or if we did want to do some healthy rotation, we could have Lacazette up top, Martinelli on the wing, and then Saka on the other wing. So I think there's many different options, and that's ideally where you want to be at. Mike Hernandez made a great point the other day, is that we have a lot of depth at positions other than some of the most crucial ones on the pitch in midfield and I guess left back. So we kind of have a lot of center backs and a lot of wingers and strikers, but we don't actually have a lot of options at other positions. So I think it's good. What we're going to see is hopefully Martinelli pushing Aubameyang for those minutes, and it'll hopefully elevate the performance of Aubameyang. Because we look at players like Willian, Aubameyang, when they were going through that really poor stretch of form, there was no one really behind them that we could play. We were saying, play Pepe there, play Willock there, play all these other options that, we tried them, and the end product wasn't any better than it was before. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's not Team Auba, Team Martinelli. I think, it's whoever's performing. If they continue to perform, we'll kind of revisit that discussion for who's the better player for that matchup.
And people have to remember that Martinelli is still incredibly young as a player. It's not like he's a 23, 24-year-old kid that's trying to vie for minutes against an established player like Aubameyang. He's still exceptionally young, and he's being given a lot of kind of faith in him by not only Arteta, but previously Unai Emery, who integrated him into the first team as well. And he's a weird player for me, Martinelli. He's a really kind of odd character, because I can never work out kind of which game suits him best. I feel like he's really good against kind of the oppositions which dominate us, the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool, so that when we're out of possession, he's the one that presses. But when we're kind of heavily in possession, I don't look at Martinelli as a person that's going to do what Aubameyang does, where you can get those balls in behind, because Martinelli's kind of always done well on the back foot and winning the ball back and pressing and then creating chances and making things out of nothing. Whereas Aubameyang's very much more, you create those chances for him and make those spaces for him, and he's lethal in those areas 9 times out of 10. French, how do you kind of evaluate Martinelli as a player? When should we be looking to play him? When is he going to get the opportunities? And do you think he's going to be okay with effectively being Aubameyang's probably backup for the next season or two?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think it's been said a few times that they're both quite low touch players, and it's quite hard to figure out how to get 2 low touch forwards on the pitch at the same time. Ideally, you want to surround a low touch goal scorer with a bunch of high touch kind of creative close space passes, so you can create as many chances as possible. That being said, it's hard. Yeah, I'm really not sure. It's a real problem for Arteta, and like Chris alluded to, it's a good problem to have because it means we've got strength and depth. if he can figure out how to get both of them on the pitch at the same time, then that's gold. And I think we haven't even really mentioned the idea of him maybe playing Martinelli through the middle and Aubameyang out wide. One thing I remember from Martinelli's first few goals that he scored for us in, I think, the Europa League and maybe the League Cup, some assists from Kieran Tierney. There were crosses, and he's surprisingly good in the air for a guy who's not particularly big. He's really sharp, and he's got a good head on him, and he's scored some great headers from, I think Chambers had one lovely one-touch pass into the box that he got a lovely header off, and he's just got, I do think he's got a little bit more to his game than, I see what you mean in terms of playing in large spaces and being able to press and win back the ball, but I also maybe see a role for him, because I haven't seen those goals from him in a while, and I think if we are more in possession, we do seem to like to cross the ball a lot, and if we're crossing the ball a lot, I want to see Martinelli in the box, because I think he can get on the end of those, and I don't see many of our players who can do that, and for me, I think he's probably one of our maybe more natural headers of the ball in terms of getting those kind of opportunities in the back.
Arguably our best header of the ball.
yeah. I'm thinking of Gabriel. That's why I hesitate. Big Gabriel at the back there has got a couple of goals for us as well from corners.
Very true.
But yeah, that's going to be one of the big kind of questions for Arteta, how you kind of figure that out. Can we get them both on the pitch at the same time? But it's a good problem to have, and it's not something I'm too worried about, because I think, you know, Gabby's just making he's made a case for himself that we know he has to get minutes, he has to play. So we'll find a way to make it work, because we kind of have to.
No, and I think that obviously the contract situation with Lacazette, whether Arsenal choose to pursue a striking option in the summer or a following summer at the end of Lacazette's contract, if we don't move him on this incoming summer transfer window, Martinelli's future could be in the middle. As you say, if he's going to be getting on the end of crosses, that is pretty much where he's going to have to be, is playing as a central kind of striker. I do like him in the wide areas. I think he comes off the flanks really excellently well, and that enables him to press size as well. But when he matures and gradually learns the best role, when Arteta gets him into the position that suits him the most, it could be in that central area. And it's nice to know that if Lacazette does move on or we run out of that contract, that if we bring someone in, we've still got Martinelli, who's versatile enough that he could play in and around that central striking position. Let me know in the chat box what you guys think about Martinelli. Do you think that his kind of future lies in the middle of the pitch, or is he for you an out left or right winger? We've got Daniel saying, if we played Auba and Martinelli, then just Laka to get dropped in that scenario. We're going to come on to the Cedric stuff. I know people are keen. We're going to get there. Don't worry. And there's a lot of fish about fly. I mean, French, I haven't been able to ask you this question, but do you think fish can fly? Is this a thing?
I don't know where this has come from. I've noticed it's just popped up in a couple of pods, and I'm like, I'm not sure how this is original. The chat's just trolling you, mate. They're having you on. Like, they obviously cannot fly.
There you go. Chris, do you want to retort this?
So there is a species, like a family of fish, that are called flying fish. Can they physically fly? Like, can fish fly in the sense that birds can fly? No. I scientifically they can't. But to say flying fish don't exist is incorrect, because they do exist.
I'm talking about. It's just fish can't fly. Like, fish can't fly. Like, it's just not a thing. But we've made an emoji from it now, so you can get the emoji going in the chat box, guys.
There's been a lot of Cedric love in the chat.
Yes.
We'll get to it later. I'm baffled. Is that another running one, or what's going on?
I don't know if you've caught the last couple of pods, I've basically gone on record several times in saying that I don't know why we signed him, why we've got him, why we would ever think about playing him ahead of Bellerin, and then he does okay. I mean, let's talk about it now. We might as well. So I had to have some delicious humble pie yesterday after the game in the reaction pod. I mean, I'll come to Chris after you, French, because I know where Chris's head's kind of at with the situation, but I'm sure he's going to explain it in a little bit more detail. But French, first, what did you make of his performance, firstly? And is that, if you thought it was good, an anomaly, or is it actually, no, he is this good and he can be a solid option for us when Bellerin's not fit? And do you actually see him as maybe even a future option to replace Bellerin, which some people genuinely do.
Okay. All right. First of all,
I'm loving the response already.
I wasn't ready for the. Okay. With regards to his performance, I'll have to say, I'll be completely honest. At halftime, I had some unsavory words to say about him. I left them in the chat. I won't repeat them here. But I wasn't particularly impressed. I just saw a lot of loose balls. But to be fair, I could be accused of having a bit of an agenda because I've previously questioned the transfer a lot myself. And, you know, you could also make the case that he's not played much Premier League minutes. And so, of course, he's going to be a little bit out of form, what have you. In the second half, he did pretty well. He really grew into the half. And by the end of it, he was playing one-touch football with El Neni, which was just lovely to see. You know, I was getting a laugh at that.
Yeah, it's great.
The assist he managed to pull off as well was you know, it was good. He had like a little passage of play where he then won the ball back after having gone forward already and managed to. So he was showing tenacity. He was fighting for his place. He's trying to show the manager he wants to play. Got to give him credit for that. You have to obviously caveat by acknowledging that it's a small sample size against a team that's not very good at all. So it's kind of hard to say. I mean, Newcastle are not relegation candidates now, but you could see them getting lower down to that end of the table. And so I wouldn't be so quick to say that he's a quality right back because he had a good game against them. We can say Partey had a quality game against them, and we know he's a quality player because of what he's done at Atletico Madrid and what he did against United. And we know we've got some other reference points for that. For Cedric, I think you have to still caveat it. That being said, I think he's shown that he can provide an option at right back. I don't quite know what the Maitland-Niles thing was about. I think Arteta in his press conference spoke about, the Mainsley thing was about. In his press conference, he spoke about Mainsley needing to show that he wanted to play. So, I mean, Cedric was definitely showing that he wanted to play. And I think he's going to be probably featuring as the number 2 right back from now on. I don't know where that leaves Mainsley, but I'm happy with that, to be honest. I'm glad that he's showing that he's got something that he can contribute to us. You know, I love it when a player can make me shut up, basically. So I'm very happy to shut me up, and long may it continue. But replacing Bellerin with Cedric, I mean, again, your chat's having you on. Someone said is Cedric another flying fish, and I think that's probably
there we go.
Going on here.
Can fish fly? Can Cedric replace Bellerin? The answers are the same. Chris, go for gold, mate. Go for gold on Cedric.
If I'm not in the chat, I got to speak my honest opinion. So, like,
hold on. You're saying every time you speak in the chat, you're a liar. That's what you're saying.
Exactly, Tom. I am 100% a liar every time I'm in the chat, or at least 99% of the time. There's a reason why Southampton let him go. Like, there's no other reason when they were in a relegation battle that they could have looked at their roster and said, yeah, we don't need Cedric. Like, we're totally fine. We have cover at these positions. I think there's a reason why they let him go, and it is a questionable signing. French, you're absolutely correct. I think Cedric's had some decent performances kind of sprinkled in, but yesterday was by far his best performance of the season. But again, you have to look at the opponent. You have to look at the context and the situation. Newcastle weren't offering much on their wing play. They weren't much of a counter-attacking threat. I think they had 4 chances on goal yesterday, and even debatable if those are really 4 chances. So he didn't have much to actually do defensively. I think in a team that's going to sit down in a low block where you're not afraid of them kind of counter-attacking you down the flanks or even kind of just slicing through you through the middle, I think Cedric is a good play because he does offer a bit more than Bellerin kind of down that right flank from an attacking standpoint, a crossing standpoint. Not necessarily like his movement. I know Bellerin can make some nice runs into the box, but one thing that I would criticize Bellerin for is that as soon as he gets the ball in that kind of final third area, he sometimes lost these odd crosses into the box that directly lead to a counterattack. And the Tottenham game was a perfect example when I think they went the other way, and that was the play that Partey ended up getting injured on, is that they went directly the other way after he kind of lofted in one of these chipped crosses that was nowhere near any of our players, and they went back the other way and scored. So if Bellerin can kind of refine his delivery in those final third moments, I do think that overall you have to say that he's a better right back than Cedric. I don't think you'd see the likes of PSG, Barcelona going after Cedric. And if they were, then, bigger questions would have to be asked of those.
Yeah. the where you went and where you started from that monologue about Cedric, and it came from the Southampton part, and the fact that Southampton didn't need him, didn't want him, whatever the reason was, they were willing to let him go. They didn't want to re-sign him to a contract. And when you are Arsenal, which I know comes across as a very arrogant phrase, but Arsenal are a club with ambitions of getting back into the Champions League, being back up as an established, not even top 4 now, but established top 6 club. Leicester have effectively booted us out of that at this stage in time. We need to be looking at establishing players into the team that would be getting into other top 4 sides. And that's why we've made the moves to sign Gabriel at centre-back, who does get in to a lot of those top 4. I mean, if you're looking at a partner for Van Dijk, Gabriel over Matip or Joe Gomez for me any day of the week. If you're looking for a partner for Ruben Diaz, he's up there with Laporte. I don't think maybe Laporte probably gets in there ahead of him, most certainly. And the way John Stones is playing, definitely. But is he better than Manchester United centre-backs? Of course he's better than theirs. Is he better than Chelsea's? Yes. Then we've got Thomas Partey, who gets into any midfield in the Premier League comfortably. Arsenal are starting to make signings in the most recent windows that are improving us and moving up to that level that we need to. And again, it's something that I feel that Edu was not given enough credit for, to be honest, in the summer when he has changed the complexion of Arsenal signing players. It wasn't enough, I know, and we missed out on the player that we maybe needed in a creative player that had we have got, we may have not had the start to the season what we had, but maybe then we wouldn't be talking about Emil Smith Rowe in the way that we have now. So it's all ifs and buts and hindsight. But when it comes down to Cedric, he isn't going to transform our right-hand side. He had a really good game, and I'm really happy that he did. And as French said, there's nothing more we enjoy than a player proving us wrong and making us hold our hands up and say, look, we were wrong on this guy for a bit, and he's really kind of shown us up here, and that's great. But I think to say that he is better than Bellerin in just after that one performance based on... And I really stand by my words after Crystal Palace that I thought Bellerin had an excellent defensive game against Crystal Palace and was really good. Yes, he didn't have the best game going forwards, but he had a better defensive game than I've ever seen him play. And if he can add that defensive side to his game and play to the attacking capabilities that we know Bellerin can do on a consistent basis, and then you've got the Bellerin of old back again, arguably even better with the defensive side added to his game. It's a lot of ifs and buts again. Go on, Chris.
And I was just going to say, I think the problem is now that we have Tierney on the left side, everyone kind of views that right side as we don't have a Kieran Tierney on that side. We want a Kieran Tierney. And then what ends up happening is that if the option on the right side that's first choice isn't as good as Tierney, it ends up being this debate of what other options do we have? Let's back that guy over whoever's the first choice starting right back. And I think that's kind of what it's devolved into. And I do think that, like, with Bellerin, I think it's a fair point to say that, you know, we might need an upgrade at that position that can maybe provide something the exact same as Tierney can. But to say that Bellerin's been the problem for our team throughout this season, I think it's just a bit of hyperbole.
Yeah, I agree. Dave, who's one of our trusted and established members in the group, says, we are a team relying quite a lot on our fullbacks to create for us. Cedric seems to be able to do that more than Bellerin. I felt we were able to attack down both wings because Cedric played. Now, again, I understand the point, and you're not incorrect. So we were able to attack down both flanks because of Cedric. But what you're implying there for me is that Bellerin doesn't enable us to attack. And I don't think that's right. I think Bellerin's had arguably a couple of poor games on that right-back position in an attacking sense. But he can attack and has shown to be a really good attacking fullback. Arguably, people used to say that was his biggest drawback, that's all he was an attacking fullback. So if he can add the defensive side to his game that we saw against Palace and get back onto form, which I still think after this injury is going to take time, which I know happened a long time ago, but if you've watched the documentary that we talked about earlier, it takes a long time to recover from these huge injuries and get back to that same level. Speaking of where else creativity come from, the assist for the first goal came from what many people on social media looked at as an unlikely source, which I was quite pleased about, because the amount of videos I did on this guy saying that he would add to our creativity, it was a level of justification that came my way, which counterbalanced the Cedric embarrassment. So French, Thomas Partey, we mentioned him briefly a second ago about a player that gets into almost any other Premier League squads. And he does transform our midfield. He has barely played this season, and he's been injured because the classic Arsenal curse of players that never injured before moved to Arsenal, and just it is what it is. But now he's back and seemingly able to start, and most importantly, desperate to play every single game possible. Is he the guy, more maybe than Emile Smith Rowe, that transforms this Arsenal side for the rest of the season? Mute.
That's fine. I was just deliberating anyway, trying to stall for
yeah.
It's actually really hard to say, to be honest, because the roles that they play are so different and both so important. At the end of the day, what both of them do really well is they have an incredible football mind, by where they seem to know what they want to do with the ball roughly before they even get the ball. I mean, Smith Rowe even spoke about it after the game in an interview. It's that sort of one-touch ball, one-touch passing, ability to play around a press and in sort of tight spaces, because you're smart enough to know what you want to do, and B, you're good enough to actually do it. Partey is a big guy, and he's been kind of wrongly painted as just a guy who just goes around and smashes people, and that's all he can do. He's like a tall Conte or something like that. He's much more than that, and you always spoke about it, Tom, on the tactical breakdowns that he did of him before he came. And it's something that I always try and tell my mates, if you want to talk about one of the most complete midfielders in the Premier League, you have to talk about Thomas Partey. Because what he can do with his feet, he's got really nimble little feet. He can dance around players. He can, just kind of flick up from one foot to the other and just play his way through a press just brilliantly. And for that first goal, I think Cedric got the header. Lacazette kind of touched it down into Partey's path, who immediately had someone in front of him. And he just tapped it from left to right, played around him, and then straight away up to Aubameyang. And beautiful ball over the top, one-on-one. And Aubameyang does, well, he actually sliced the shot, to be honest, but he still scored and put it in the back of the net. And I mean, I wasn't surprised, because we know he can do that, but a lot of people were, you're right. And I think it's a highly underrated part of his game. And you're thinking, right, to be honest, at first, I wasn't sure if he was going to work well with Granit Xhaka. I know you spoke about them being a really good potential double pivot. I had the kind of view that they both really wanted to be dictators of play. And I wasn't sure. It's not that I thought it wouldn't work. I wasn't sure if Granit could step back and let someone else dictate the play, because he usually likes everything to sort of go through him. But what I've noticed, not just in this game, but in the last game against Palace when Partey came on for the last 30, is that Granit's defensive level just stepped up massively. He's been defensively in the last 120 minutes of football really solid, probably throughout the game. But I think maybe I noticed it more when Partey was on, and I feel like he is showing that he's capable of kind of stepping back and having another partner to do that kind of role. And if he can ping it with his left, and then Partey can ping the same thing with his right, we open up an incredible kind of range of field. And it's that switch, isn't it, from defense, from counter, from taking the ball, switching it to attack. And that's the thing that him and Emile both do really well. I know I kind of went on to Xhaka and went on a roundabout point there. But...
No, it's fine. I don't think you can talk about that Partey display without talking about the partnership with Xhaka, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's the midfield, isn't it? That's what we're really talking about with Smith Rowe as well, isn't it? It's and that's what looked like a bit of a dumpster fire at the start of the season before Partey came in. When Smith Rowe wasn't playing, and we were like, oh God, what are we going to do with this midfield? And all of a sudden now, it's starting to look like we've got a bit of a, not just a foundation, but maybe a spine running through with Smith Rowe and Partey. And I noticed a few combinations between them that just made me think, okay, they can find it. Partey can find Smith Rowe. He can find him over the top. He looks for him and he's where he wants him to be. And that's really exciting. Just before I go on, there's one thing I want to say. I'm kind of disappointed with what I'm seeing from the chat here. There's, I think, 9 people watching, and there's 22 likes on the video. What's going on? We need like at least 60, 70 likes on that. You need to up that ratio, man. It's not looking good.
Drop a like. Smash the classic 2020 line of smash the like button. No, we appreciate your support, guys. And if you could drop a like, and obviously if you are new, hit that subscription button and check out some of the stuff we've been doing and releasing. There is more to come. Mike, shame on you, chat room. Chris, when it comes down, I want to linger on Granit Xhaka before we go on to user questions. This is kind of the last topic of discussion before we do go on to questions. So if there is something you think we've missed, not Cedric, we've covered him. But if there is something that you think we need to discuss or talk about, your last 15 minutes of show is the opportunity for you guys to ask us questions. So please start beginning to throw them into the chat box. Use the capital Q to make sure that they stand out, please, guys. Granit Xhaka, it's interesting. Again, I want to kind of talk about them in tandem again with Xhaka and Partey. What I noticed from Xhaka is not only what French said about how his game steps up, especially defensively, and I think also that what we saw against Palace was a player that did step up defensively, but also made those mistakes that he makes and then kind of covered up those mistakes by some really good recovery work. But when you've got a player like Partey next to you and you make those mistakes, he's there to mop those up as well. And I think that Partey is a player that obviously emphasises the good things about Xhaka. And when you watch Partey, the amount of times I saw him pick the ball up in the middle of the park and always look to move the ball forwards, pass it forwards even into a tight space where a player's under pressure, but passing it forwards, creating movement, creating panic amongst the opposition players. And Granit Xhaka and the tactical way that him being left-footed on the left-hand side and passing the ball out to Tierney to really kind of open up that left flank. Do you think it is a partnership that can ultimately work? And is it mainly down to, like we saw with El Neni against Man United, Partey emphasising and enhancing the abilities of his partner?
I don't think the two are kind of independent of one another. I think if you put anyone next to Partey, you're going to have a similar effect where they elevate their game. And I think it was actually Dave Lennon who made a great point in the chat, which is essentially that by having Partey back there, you're essentially going to have that security at the back that allows Xhaka to have more freedom to press and intercept the ball higher up the pitch, which is exactly where Xhaka excels. If you leave Xhaka with the kinds of sole defensive responsibilities at the back to kind of protect the back four, that's when he gets in trouble because he doesn't have the pace to recover and make up for other people's mistakes. So what we're seeing right now is an actual successful partnership between Partey and Xhaka because they've kind of started to figure out that between the two of them, they can kind of both dictate play. If the one's dictating play, the other acts as an outlet for them or kind of runs forward to kind of join the attack and link up with Smith Rowe or someone on the flanks. So I do think that it's hard to say that, Xhaka is kind of the long-term answer as the pivot next to Partey. But as we saw with El Neni, your game can immediately be elevated. It's just you're offering different things. With El Neni, it's kind of that nonstop motor. You move the ball quickly. With Xhaka, it's kind of more of that long-range distribution. And he's able to make those incisive passes on the flanks, especially to Tierney, much better than El Neni. It's more consistent and much better than El Neni can. And I've been very impressed with Xhaka. He's kind of one of those players that we were all hating on, saying that he wasn't good enough. But there's something that happens at the turn of every season or every year in January that he just kind of wakes up and just becomes this totally different player. So if you can ignore kind of the first half of every season, you're going to see a better Xhaka by the end of it. But I do think you made a good point in terms of Xhaka. You kind of know what you're getting with him. And he's impressed us a lot lately. We've been noticing him a lot more, but it is because of Partey. Like even without Partey, I did think he played well. What was the match that we played right before the Newcastle game? It was
West Brom. We had West Brom and Brighton and
it was the Palace game.
Palace, sorry, yes.
Palace. So with the Palace game, he was good that game. He was good. He wasn't as outstanding as he was last match. I think Partey and Xhaka kind of dictated play. The one criticism that I would still have of Xhaka is that he still looks uncomfortable passing with his right foot. It's always a little bit awkward. But having Partey there, he can kind of make that pass in a very tight space, even if a defender is on Partey, because he trusts Partey to be able to get out of that situation and be able to kind of put the ball back into a favorable position for the team, which you don't get from someone like Ceballos or El Neni. So that's kind of a big piece. El Neni is Ceballos holds onto the ball for way too long, and then El Neni kind of just passes the ball like almost too quickly. So with Partey, you kind of get that nice combination of both, where He knows exactly where the ball needs to go, but if he needs to hold on to it to kind of beat his man, he's able to do that. So it just kind of offers Xhaka a little bit more of that reliability that we're not seeing in the other midfield partners. And Xhaka almost knows that he's almost like a 1B option next to Partey, opposed to kind of having to be that alpha in the midfield.
Yeah, no, I think you've summed it up perfectly. At the end of the day, Partey is the type of player, not just his position and the quality, but the characteristic whereby what we've talked about there of enhancing the abilities of the players that he's partnered with and around him. They're the types of players that we need to be adding to the team. Gabriel, I feel, has done that in the defence with his right centre-back partner and has arguably enhanced Rob Holding when playing with him. And he's kind of carried that on in Gabriel's absence even as well and earned that new contract from that too. I think his left-footed nature works with Tierney on the left-hand side, which is also great. But it needs to be done in the summer market when we look to buy the players in the summer. We need to be looking at players and the characteristics, not just what they do individually, but how the team around them performs when they're on the pitch. And this is why I was kind of against the Auba signing. From listening to the advice of the likes of Jeremy Smith, who's at French Football Weekly, and listening to him talk about how when Lyon play bad, he doesn't step up. He's the one that drops to their level and his performance drops as well. Whereas Partey, whenever Atletico Madrid played bad, was always the standout, the one trying to keep things going and moving and turn that team around. And it's the character within players that we need to be targeting. We've started to do it with Martinelli and Tierney as well, the character that those two have, and the tenacity and the drive that they have and the ambition. That's the type of players that we need.
And I just want to add one more point. I don't want to understate the kind of significance of Emile Smith Rowe. He's really changed Xhaka's game too, because Xhaka you don't want him being the player that kind of has to make up for the loss of creativity in the center of the park. He's now able to advance the ball to Tierney or Emile Smith Rowe, and that's making a massive difference in Xhaka's game. It's kind of simplified things for him because he now knows that up ahead of me, I have kind of a focal point to get the ball to that isn't Lacazette, who's 29 and lumbering kind of as a lone striker, dropping back all the way. Emile Smith Rowe is able to collect the ball, quickly turn, and that it just instantly makes Xhaka a better player too.
It does. Let's crack on with user questions. We've got 15 minutes or so left. There's quite a lot to get through, you guys. So if we could try and keep our answers to as streamlined as feasibly possible. French, starting off with you, mate. Daniel Roberts says, what role does Willian have in our squad? Maybe Gunnosaurus.
It's terrible. Do you know what? I don't. Arteta really wants it to work, doesn't he? Like every time we're winning like 3-4-0, is like, okay, go on,
Bring him on.
Interesting
that he brought him on instead of Pepe yesterday.
And the same against, I think it was it West Brom or it is it's quite frustrating for me as someone who, I don't particularly like Willian, and I do like Pepe more than most fans seem to be liking him at the moment. And so I'm thinking, why doesn't he get these chances? And Arteta, obviously, this is his signing in some way, and he wants it to work. It's just not happening, is it? I mean, that free kick, everyone was like, oh, is he gonna? No. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think he's just gonna keep trying and making it work. And for me, I think it's just a failed signing. It happens, and they're gonna have to try and move him on as quickly as possible, in my opinion.
DWTT says, outside of backup goalkeeper, do we need any other player now, or should we wait until the summer, Chris?
This is a great question. I do think that we probably need some cover at left back, whether or not we have the funds to get it. It's kind of up to anyone's guess. I do think that if Tierney went down with an injury, same with Leno, those are kind of our two most vulnerable positions. And then like attacking midfielder, I love Emile Smith Rowe, and I do think he's kind of the future for us at that spot. But if he went down for an injury, who are we looking at to play that role? Willian, neither of those inspire confidence right now. So I think all three of those positions are ones that we should look at, but long-term solutions should only come probably in the summer.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll answer this one from the real Janice, who says, who would you bring in as a cam? Would they be a backup or a starter ahead of Emile Smith Rowe? And would it be a loan or a buy? It kind of follows on from what Chris said there. In terms of that position, I don't think we can leave ourselves open to either not only injury, but with the climate that we're in, if Smith Rowe has to miss 3 games through a self-isolation or something like that, it could really harm us. So it's not something. So a short-term deal, I think, suits us. but we have to be careful about who it is, because the likes of an Eriksen or an Isco, the wages, what you can expect from those guys within this in a short space of time, I don't think you'd get necessarily from them. And you need to consider Smith Rowe and the development of the player. So it's a tricky one. I'm always kind of an advocate of, if you bring someone in, you have to upgrade. Always look to upgrade. Don't just parry. You can't stay romantically connected to the hope of Emile Smith Rowe, because even though he looks great now, there is obviously no guarantees that he does turn into an amazing player. We've seen it with young players before. They've shown a little bit of spark. I mean, you remember when Nelson burst onto the scene, everyone was kind of thinking, wow, this guy's going to be amazing. And then it hasn't quite worked out. So we have to bear that in mind. I obviously love Buendia. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he can play in multiple positions. I look at players like Lorenzo Pellegrini at Roma as a possible option as well. But I think it's for the summer, as Chris said. Zamir, Chris says, is Chris still Arteta out in the chat? Do you want to even dignify that with a response? Or
I was never Arteta out. I was just trying to wind people up.
Yeah, I know what you're like. French Rahil says, great show, lads. Who do you start and who do you rest in the FA Cup against who we assume will be Southampton at this stage?
Yeah, that's a tough call. I would lean into maybe... I don't want to play Tierney. That's one person I would definitely rest. We have to play Leno. The centre-backs, I would like to see Gabriel play. I think we could, obviously, if he's okay, I think Partey should probably get a few minutes in his legs again. As you mentioned, he's barely played for us. Imagine what he's like on full match fitness. Aubameyang, maybe just to continue continue the potential, like goal scoring form. And he seems like the kind of player who can just continue to play. But I would actually, to be fair, I think Martinelli needs to start. So, I guess rest Martinelli, rest Aubameyang, Tierney. And I'd want to see Gabriel and Partey playing.
Chris, Ed Welch, it's not necessarily a question, but he would like us to leave a thought on Leno. I think he's proven to be a quality signing and his distribution has improved massively in recent weeks. Was nice to see him having less to do, though, against Newcastle.
You know what? Now that Leno's been playing better, I'm glad we're no longer hearing the Emmy versus Leno didn't call the right keeper debate. I think I've just made a mistake by saying that, because the chat's probably going to explode with some Emmy Martinez is better comments now. But I think Leno's been great, and I think if you have the right front line in front of him and the right defensive structure, it was exactly what we saw with Martinez to close out last season. He's going to be more secure. He's going to have, like, when he's called upon to make a save and have, like, show his great reflexes, he's much better. I do think that he's also I don't know if it's a tactical thing or if it's an individual thing, but I have noticed that he's more willing to kind of play the ball long now. He's not always looking to play it out, but you are starting to see patterns of play develop as we play the ball out. And now that we're in the attacking third, I think everyone's just more comfortable in the role.
Pablo Mira, who of course joined myself, Rahil, and Jared on the last Expert Members pod, says, I'll take this one. If a good offer for Xhaka comes in, would you sell or keep him for another season or two? I would personally let him go. I agree with you, Pablo. Ironically, it kind of goes forward from what Chris was saying earlier about Xhaka, that we've had to wait kind of 6 months for Xhaka to arrive, and that has been in part down to Partey and kind of enhancing him as well. He always goes through these fits and spurts of good form, really bad form, making some horrific mistakes, and he's not a player that you can count on for an entire season. Whilst I defend him a lot on the channel, I'm not an idiot, and I do know that he is a flawed player, and he's not someone that I would invest any further kind of extra proper contract. I wouldn't be averse to saying when he comes to the end of his deal, offering, say, a 1 year and keeping him going on a 1 year if no interest is there for him. But if someone comes in with a bid and it's respectable, I think you have to give it a real look. But I'm not averse to saying a 1 year rolling contract when he gets to 30. For a player that can be useful to us at times, but he should not, when he gets to that point, be Arsenal's what we're kind of resting on, if you know what I mean. Is it you, Chris, or is it French? Where am I at? Who's next? Someone help me.
I think it's French.
It's French. Okay, French. Ansgar says, if we don't get a new centre-back to start on the right-hand side, would you rather keep Louise or Chambers as a fifth choice centre-back, or would you trust Saliba to go with 4 centre-backs?
I'm pretty sure. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Chambers, or like, I definitely wouldn't go with 4. I think 5 is wise. I definitely don't want to keep Louise if at all possible. So you have to assume if Chambers is still with us and he's in some way serviceable, and yeah, I do so.
I think that when you look at the right-hand side, you've got Holding. At the end of this season, we will have definitely got rid of, even if it's now or in the summer, Mustafi, Socrates, Louise. There's talk of maybe a Louise another year on him. There's talk of that. I don't know if that will happen, but there's whispers of that at the moment. And then you've got Chambers and Saliba. So you've got 3 centre-backs that can play right-hand side if we do lose those 3. Arsenal are, as we know, interested in bringing in a right-sided centre-back. Who that is, we don't know. So that could be 4. And I think that is wise when we hopefully will have European competition again next season to have that rotation. So, yeah, I agree with you. Lathan, Chris says, who is more likely to be sold this summer, Maitland-Niles or Bellerin? My opinion is that Arsenal won't look to sell Bellerin due to his leadership qualities. Selling Mainsley is easier way to make money.
Will I be chastised if I say Mainsley?
No, of course not, mate. Of course not. I understand it.
Yeah, so if I'm being honest with you, I think Mainsley definitely probably will be sold. He hasn't been able to nail down a regular place in the squad. I know a lot of people have wanted him to play in the central midfield, but what I've noticed is outside of Europa League games, every time we do play him in the central role, he doesn't really have that technical security or kind of that final ball with the there to deliver those incisive passes that we might actually be looking for. As a right back, he's had mixed performances. Some matches he looks great, especially defensively. But I do think he's kind of one of those jack of all trades, master of none type players that he can't nail down a regular spot in the squad. And I think ultimately he's probably going to be sold before Bellerin is.
Yeah, I feel like that Mainsley's time is kind of numbered at the club. And I think that we could see him go this summer. I think he would suit. He would start in like a mid-table. We're mid-table, but like a mid to lower half of the league. But I don't. Again, he's similar to what I think with Nelson and Nketiah and Willock. I don't see a long-term starting berth for him at Arsenal. And I think if Arsenal had the opportunity to make some money, like if you told me that Wolves were coming along this year with a £20 million bid, I would be inclined to accept that. I think and reinvest that into bringing in more quality into the team. Which I think pretty much rounds off our question section, which is nice. Thank you so much for everyone that has contributed with questions this evening. Always appreciated. We close out the show with, of course, our predictions for the game next, which is, as I say, we're assuming it's going to be Southampton. It is 1-0 at the time of recording with 71 minutes on the clock. Stranger things have happened in the world of football. What we do know, though, is that we will be playing Southampton in the league on the following Tuesday. So there is certainly a prediction that we can do for both games. French, I'll start with you. Give me some thoughts on kind of the FA Cup. I know you were asked a question about rotation earlier, but just some thoughts on that, where it kind of you think it lies in Arteta's priorities this season and how you expect Arteta to approach that game no matter who we play.
Yeah, well, the run we've got is crazy, isn't it? I think it's just all Premier League teams. We had Newcastle, Southampton, I think, is it Wolves after if we go through?
Yes.
Most likely. So it's
Chorley, I think.
I think he's been sorry?
Oh, Wolves or Chorley.
Yeah. Okay. So he played a fairly strong team against Newcastle. We have to think he started Tierney and Aubameyang. They played until the end of extra time. So I think he's going to want to defend as much as he can. It was he won a trophy in his first few months as manager. So it's going to mean a lot to him, I think, and he's not going to want to go out early. So I think he'll go fairly strong. Another player I forgot to mention who I do want to play, and it's really annoying me that I forgot to mention him, but it sort of says a lot, is Nicola Pepe. I think we really want to see him start. But after that game, against Newcastle, we just didn't mention him, did we? Like, we were so happy with what we got from that right-hand side. That is just no mention of him. But I think he will start against Southampton, and I think we'll get a fairly strong side. I think Arteta's going to want to defend it. Me personally, I'm not so fussed on it. I think the cup we want to really go for is the Europa League. It's going to be very hard to win as well, but it's got the best kind of fruits of reward for us, I believe. So yeah, for the game, I think it's going to be a tough one. I think I will score a few goals from. Well, actually, you know what? We've had a lot of clean sheets.
I love this internal turmoil that you're going through.
It's a window into my life, mate. It's every day, internal turmoil. Yeah, I'm going to go for a sticky 1-0, like right near the end. Yeah.
Chris?
You took my prediction, French. Your internal turmoil kind of just got into my head. I was also going to go for a 1-0, kind of that cagey 1-0 win that Tom always likes to predict. I think there is going to be a healthy amount of rotation. It's not going to be a pretty game. A lot of people, their favorite players, I know the live chat, I think Dan Robert, he loves Willian. He's always talking about him. So I think we're going to see players like him and Pepe start. And I think we're going to be missing a little bit of something. I just think that Arteta is going to have to balance rotating players and keeping them fresh for the kind of league game. But at the same time, we know how Arteta is. He goes all out for the cups unless he's up against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. So I do think that there's going to be a nice amount of rotation in there, but you are going to see some senior players that probably need some time out there. And hopefully they aren't a drop off from what we've seen before. Like Gabriel going in is going to be massive. So I do think, I hope he's able to kind of break his way back into the team, because I do think that he's been out for a while, and I'd like to see him get some opportunities.
Awesome stuff. So are you sticking with the 1-0 as well, the cagey 1-0 win?
I'm going with the 1-0. I can't go against what French predicted.
No, that's fair enough. I feel like with the rotation that we're going to make, we will concede. I think that'll come from probably Tierney getting a rest and something coming down on the right-hand side. Ironically, Walcott most likely being that guy, and getting another goal against us. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, positive as always. Thank you to everyone in the chat box this evening. You two have got some really good love from the guys. Really good and interesting comments. Daniel Roberts saying, fantastic show, amazing guest. Chris was good too. Dave Lennon says, super lads, top draw. Yannick Max says, big up French. And the imposter, what does he mean by the imposter? What does he mean?
I think he's talking about my icon. He says that I'm an imposter ever since I've changed it.
Right, of course, that makes sense. Russ says French is a top man, and Fung is all right as well. So there you go. Mr. Joker, Chris is always entertaining. French, excellent show as always. And we've got some predictions from you guys as well. Patrick Carlson says 4-0 to the Arsenal. Pepe hat-trick. That'd be quite incredible. Dan Robert with his classic 6-0 to the Arsenal. Lackers to score all of them. Yannick Mack says 3-2 to the Ars. Absolutely loving that prediction, mate. Love the positivity from Yannick in the chat, is always appreciated. And it's just nice to see that there is kind of the feeling, the mood around the club and the fan base is shifting again. After the Palace game, it crashed incredibly hard, as if like you'd eaten about a billion crunchies and then just had the biggest sort of. I don't know if you have crunchies in the US, Chris. It's a very British thing. Do you have crunchies?
I have no idea what you're talking about right
now.
They're
It's like honeycombs covered in chocolate. Like, do you have a chocolate bar that's that?
Oh, we do have crunchies. I thought you were talking about cereal.
Oh no. No. It's like, I'm saying, like, you get a sugar rush because you've eaten so many crunchies, and that's how it felt after the Palace game, is that we'd had these 3 victories or 4 victories, including Newcastle, and then we drew against Palace and it just crashed and the fan base just completely plummeted. We've hopefully got back on with things again with this win against Newcastle, and if we can get a really impressive win against Southampton, it'd be big. Go on, Chris, sorry.
If I were to tell you that we would lose to Southampton in the FA Cup but win the league match, what would you take that, or would you just want to win flat out though?
What are you saying? You can guarantee me a win in the league, and then lose the FA Cup game, but or I can risk both games. I'm the optimist, mate, so I'm risking both of them. So it's just, yeah. Ed Welch said I'd rip your hand off for that. So there you go. You take what you can get. Thank you, Chris, for your time this evening and jumping on, of course, at short notice. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Tom. Always a pleasure to be on the show. I'm, as you can tell, much more well-behaved when I'm on as a guest as opposed to in the chat. Won't tell you if I'm an imposter, and Chris, the actual Chris, paid me to come on, but he said that. And I hope The chat was lively as always. You guys are absolute legends, as Tom says. Thanks again, and hope you're all keeping safe during the pandemic.
Yeah, 100%. And I can only echo those words. And I would say where you can find Chris on social media, but he's a genius and doesn't have it. So you won't need to. If you do want to find him, you can find Chris in our Discord server. If you want to join and have the opportunity to come on the show like Chris has this evening, join up as one of our expert members or TGT ambassadors, and you can get access to that Discord server and the chance to come on the show as well. Thank you, my boy French. Really absolute pleasure as always to have you on, fella, and nice to see you in the new year as well.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. I'm really glad you might have just gave me a brilliant $1 billion idea. I think crunchy cereal is a game changer. Just think about it. But no, it was really nice chatting with you guys about the games, and yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I've noticed the likes have doubled, so we've done something. Thank you guys. We appreciate your support.
There you go. We are aware that it's a very hectic Arsenal pod evening tonight, so we really appreciate you guys choosing us to listen to, as opposed to some other fantastic outlets, of course, that you'll go and catch up on. And there's a lot of football on too. Just before we go, French, I need to clarify, this crunchy cereal, is this just bits of crunchy with milk, or does there need to be like actual cereal involved? Or
Nah, yeah, it's just like honeycomb drizzled in chocolate, but then you put the milk on it. It sounds good, doesn't it?
So it's like Cocoa Pops with a honeycomb center.
Yeah, but Cocoa Pops don't really have like actual like milk chocolate layer. It's just kind of infused with cocoa powder, isn't it? Whereas this is going to have actual milk chocolate with honey. Like,
this is going to be a debate.
Would the milk be flavored like crunchy, like the chocolate bar? Like, would it give you that flavor?
Well, the Crunchies are Cadbury's, aren't they? They're the dairy milk Cadbury's chocolate. So, do you have Cadbury's in it? I know it's an English brand. You don't have Cadbury's.
We have Cadbury. Like, do you think I live in an igloo or something?
No. But I thought you had like a different manufacturer of chocolate in the US.
Oh, there's a Cadbury factory in Canada.
Oh, okay. Oh, we did something right in the UK. It did come from like Bristol or something in the UK, I think, where it originated. That's where you are, French, isn't it? Bristol. So
yeah. It's from just outside Bristol. Yeah, I can't remember.
There you go. See, knowledge. Captain, I know where the chocolate is. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Really appreciate your time. You can find the guys on their social medias, or you can find Chris in the Discord server. You can follow French at FrenchGooner23 and find his inventive Twitter handles that change like the weather. And you can find us at the Gooner Talk TV and at Tom Cantor Media on Twitter. Subscribe if you've enjoyed it. Like if you've enjoyed it even more. We will see you on tomorrow's show for a tactical breakdown of Saliba's performances in Ligue 1 for Nice. But other than that, it's been a pleasure to speak to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal and cheerio.